What's going on, y'all? A&J here, and man, we're doing something that seems to have become somewhat rare. We're going to actually talk a little bit of wrestling here, and that's something we haven't done a whole lot of in quite some time. But for the reasons that we're about to go over, I feel like it's a pretty good time to do that, so let's just get right into things. We got to talk about TNA, particularly about X Division champion Leon Slater. Now, the reason I'm bringing him up is because tonight is actually the debut of TNA Impact on AMC, yet Leon Slater is not scheduled to be a part of that show, which I'm a little bit baffled by. And it doesn't help that apparently he's going with WWE on some sort of UK tour, which, I mean, I guess I don't mind, but on the day that they're debuting on a new network, like, that's kind of wild. I mean, I know they definitely have WWE to thank for that, especially because of the working relationship, but I'm kind of wondering about that. I mean, especially when you got Stax defending the international championship against Shiloh Hill, which ordinarily wouldn't be a bad thing, but defending a TNA title on a WWE show with no TNA wrestlers there, that kind of. I'm not sure about that, but it is what it is. I'm not going to say so much about that. A positive aspect of that is that AJ Styles is scheduled to appear on this debut on AMC, so maybe it's not all so bad. But as we'll get into in the next topic, this is kind of something to where it's been talked about quite a bit. I do think it's incredibly concerning for the health of TNA in the long run, but they've been losing an awful lot of free agents, namely Jake something to AEW, and of course, not long before that was Mike Bailey, and I'm pretty sure there are at least a couple other ones that I'm forgetting about, but needless to say, not a whole lot of people seem to be looking to stick around with TNA, and they've actually, as I understand, managed to re-sign Nick Nemeth, which is going to be a huge plus. I just don't know that they're really going in the right direction with this, especially with the new deal with the TV network. I don't know. Maybe it's much ado about nothing, but it is certainly an alarming trend, especially when you think about, again, the TNA International title being defended on NXT with no TNA wrestlers in sight. I'm just not so sure about that, and I'm just not so sure where Carlos Silva and company, where their heads are at, but it can't be in a really good place right now. At least I'm not convinced that it is. What is actually good is the Rascals on their way to AEW, and of course, this was announced last night during Dynamite. They'll be debuting on Dynamite next week. I mean, this is really, really interesting, really wild. Zach Wentz, Myron Reed, Trey Miguel, and Desmond Xavier, also known as Wes Lee, all are about to be all elite. And really, in a weird way, I guess you could say this is sort of a pseudo trade between WWE, AEW, and to a lesser degree TNA, although I'm feeling like TNA will wind up getting wrestlers to be named later, especially given the fact that we're going to be in for release season. I mean, that's usually after WrestleMania sometime, so expect a good chunk of names to either be heading to TNA, maybe even AEW, or who knows where else. But given the fact that the WWE has been bringing in some fresh new faces, and not to mention the fact that, you know, the potential of Leon Slater possibly ending up on Monday Night Raw to be a tag team with the newly debuted Javon Evans, it's going to be really interesting to see. And again, I feel like there's going to be a wave of releases coming up from WWE, and of course there's going to be that 90-day no compete clause, maybe even a 35 if it's NXT, but I'm very much expecting that to be the case roughly the week after or a week or so after WrestleMania. It's usually what happens. Um, I'm not exactly sure who I expect to be on that list of names, but it's going to be really, really interesting to see how all of that works out because, if nothing else, WWE is really, really, really going to have to make room for this man. That's right, Powerhouse Hobbs. The news broke last night. He is leaving AEW to join the WWE, and this one to me isn't terribly surprising. I don't remember hearing about any of his contract details, but obviously his decision has actually been made at this point. He is WWE bound, and I gotta say, this is gonna be really, really interesting. I feel like, personally, whether it's Raw or SmackDown, either side makes sense, but to me, the best thing to do is have him go to NXT. The men's main event picture is lacking, just to be kind. Um, Interestingly enough, I mentioned Leon Slater earlier. They had an incredible match between him and Obafemi a little over a week ago on NXT for the NXT World Championship, where, of course, Obafemi ultimately vacated the NXT Championship. And it just seems to me that, they really need some help down there. Hobbs would be perfect for that. You could actually pencil him in to probably be the next NXT champion or one of the next ones, depending on what they decide to do with Ricky Saints. I feel like that's probably a name that could be main roster bound. I said this about Ethan Page. I felt like that should have been the case probably a year or so ago, but given the fact that guys like Trick Williams, I mentioned Obafemi, Javon Evans, there's a good chance Joe Hendry might end up on SmackDown. Like, a lot of names have gone from NXT to either Raw or SmackDown. And then, of course, you've got to factor in the call-ups that NXT has from Evolve, namely the Vanity Project, Sean Legacy, amongst so many others. And my question now is, if he's not going to NXT, what is NXT going to wind up doing? Because, again, the cupboard for that main event picture for the men's side is just about bare. And unless you got to the point to where you're really ready to build stars like that, I mean, I'm just not sure where you're going to go with that. I mean, to me, it seems like it's pretty much set for Josh Briggs to even be one of those names you can throw on the list as far as the next NXT champion is concerned. It's just really, really wild to see, but man, it's just going to be really wild to see Powerhouse Hobbs in WWE. I mean, we're talking an actual AEW original here. Man, it's just really, really wild. I can't say that enough, but not terribly surprising at the same time. I feel like this was probably to be expected. I want to say this was something that was discussed. I mean, to what degree I can't really say, but man, Powerhouse Hobbs is WWE, and it'll also be interesting to see if he's actually going to appear on Collision this Saturday for a final appearance, particularly to drop the trios titles to Hangman Adam Page and, of course, Jet Speed, the aforementioned Speedball Mike Bailey and Kevin Knight. Yeah, not really sure what else to say other than that, so I'll go ahead and leave it at that. Let me know what y'all think. Are y'all hyped for Powerhouse Hobbs in WWE? And, man, the Rascals are all elite. What more can you say on that? Either way, let me know what y'all think down below. And, of course, if you enjoy the content, like, share, and subscribe. With that said, this has been your time with A&J, and I appreciate you spending it with me.